Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. You might have heard that Lucy Sedlakova has withdrawn from what was supposed to be the Raven Chapman fight.
She posted this via her social media.
And using sophisticated and secret technologies to discern the forbidden language, the caption reads, "I am now experiencing one of the saddest moments of my career so far. I've always tried my best, but unfortunately, I don't have this option now. I'm very sorry to announce that I have to cancel my scheduled match on March 25th later on this month. Unfortunately, I am suffering from an illness and I would not be able to perform as well as I am capable of."
Well, I think Lucy Sedlakova really dodged a bullet here because I thought Raven Chapman was going to batter her anyway.
As it stands, Peru's former champion, Linda Laura Lecca, will be standing in her place. In many ways, Linda is a more experienced fighter than Lucy Sedlakova would have been, a former champion.
Sporting a professional record of 15 wins, 5 losses with 2 draws.
2 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once in 22 professional contests, 22 professional bouts. You get the sense that Linda may be a little bit more stubborn than Lucy Sedlakova would have been.
More rounds in the bank than Lucy Sedlakova.
Certainly more rounds in the bank than Raven Chapman, who sports a professional record of 5 wins, no losses, and no draws with 2 knockouts.
As I always say when it comes to Raven Chapman, Raven, in my humble opinion, has the highest ceiling of any unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's featherweight division.
At least one of the highest ceilings. I get the sense, though, that Linda will offer up more resistance to Raven than Lucy Sedlakova would have, though all the same, I do have Raven Chapman winning the fight.
Now, Lucy was last in action in December of last year opposite the ring. Chile's own Daniela Asenjo dropped a unanimous decision to Daniela.
Linda fought 3 times last year. 3 times. Once in July, then again in August, then again in December.
So even though she is coming off a loss, she ain't got no ring rust or cobwebs she needs to shake off. She has been active.
And the same can be said for Raven Chapman, who saw action 3 times last year. 3 times. Once in May, then again in September, then again in November.
The dominant showing over Fatuma Yazidou, who had a lot more rounds in the bank and a lot more pro experience than Raven Chapman, though you'd never know it if you saw the fight.
She dominated Fatuma Yazidou. I think she may end up dominating Linda Lecca.
And here's why.
In spite of being vastly more experienced, with more rounds in the bank than Raven Chapman has as a professional, Linda Lecca is not the same physical specimen that Raven Chapman is. Raven is fast and aggressive.
Nasty.
A spiteful puncher.
I hate you.
A combination puncher. A body puncher.
You so fucking much.
Confronted with that kind of speed, that kind of athleticism and sharpness, that kind of ferocity, I feel like Linda Lecca, she's going to fight off the back foot looking to land a counter.
She's going to try to time Raven Chapman's entry, nail her with a counter shot, try to land big.
But I sincerely doubt that Linda Lecca has the speed and reflexes, the timing to nail Raven Chapman coming through the front door.
And it's not because Linda Lecca's a bad boxer. She's not a bad boxer. If I'm being honest, I actually think she's a more put-together fighter than Lucy Sedlakova would have been.
Had she not withdrawn from the fight. That in some ways, this is a better fight with a better fighter than Lucy Sedlakova would have been.
And I do think in terms of durability, Linda Lecca is a more durable fighter than Lucy Sedlakova.
She's tough, but tough ain't enough. I mean, the main problem with trying to catch Raven Chapman coming through the front door, trying to land a big counter, is that Raven comes in at a slight crouch.
Doubling and tripling up on the jab.
She comes in at an angle, and she comes in fast. Hard and fast.
Often changing levels in doing so.
So, even though Raven Chapman may seem like she's right in front of you, she's a trickier and harder target than most other fighters.
She's quick.
Sets a feverish pace for a fight.
Whereas Linda wants to fight at a more controlled and steady pace.
Create space. Look for the counter shots.
The openings.
Those openings are going to be that much harder to find, that much harder to capitalize on. Opposite the ring, someone as fast and sharp and elusive as a Raven Chapman, who is a mid-range to inside fighter.
She is.
But she's tricky. Very tricky. I think that it's possible that Linda Lecca goes the distance with Raven Chapman. I think it's at least a little bit more likely than it would have been had it been Lucy Sedlakova in the ring with Raven.
Fight scheduled for 10 rounds.
For what is the WBC's international title in the women's featherweight division, it appears that Raven Chapman is going the WBC route. She wins. That puts her on a collision course with former IBF champion and current WBC silver title holder Sarah Mahfoud of Denmark.
If Raven wins, she'll have the WBC international title. Sarah Mahfoud, she's already got the WBC silver.
So you see how it breaks down. At minimum, I like Raven Chapman to win a points decision against Linda Lecca.
Not ruling out a knockout, but because Linda's experienced and because she's tough, because she's only ever been stopped once, it's possible she goes the distance with Raven, but overall, Raven on points is the logical choice. Look for this next weekend on BT Sport.
In men's light heavyweight news, what's supposed to be light heavyweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Gilberto Ramirez versus Gabriel Rosado is reportedly off because Ramirez was 7.6 pounds overweight at 182 pounds prior to the official weigh-in for their fight at light heavyweight.
Preliminary reports seem to have indicated that Zerto missed it by 12 pounds, but it turns out it was only 7. Still, 7 pounds over the limit.
There's blowing the weight, and then there's being 7 pounds over the limit, over the contracted weight. At 7 pounds over, you have to wonder if Zerto Ramirez even tried to make the weight for this fight. Golden Boy Promotions released an official statement stating, ticket refund requests will be honored up until event doors open at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Please reach out to your point of purchase to submit a refund request.
This is a bad look for Golden Boy Promotions.
A bad look for Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya, who just the other day was laying into Eddie Hearn, Canelo Alvarez, for the matchmaking in the Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder fight.
It's a mandatory title defense. What do you want?
And the guy's coming off a hand surgery. Meanwhile, you can't get Ramirez versus Rosado over the line.
You want to criticize them?
The statement from Golden Boy Promotions continued, due to Gilberto Ramirez failing to make the contracted weight, Zerto versus Rosado has been canceled. We are very disappointed for letting our fans down and will work with Gabriel Rosado to bring him back to the ring very soon. Joseph Jojo Diaz versus Mercito Gesta is the new main event for Saturday.
That was originally intended to be the co-main event to the main event.
Though let's be honest, I don't think anyone's shaking their fists at the sky that Zerto Ramirez versus Gabriel Rosado will not be going ahead. In terms of matchmaking, it was a piss-poor offering.
It was a bad fight to begin with.
Even in terms of rebound fights, because Zerto Ramirez is on the rebound after having suffered his first professional loss to Dmitry Bivol late last year.
Even as far as rebound fights go, this was ridiculous.
And Oscar De La Hoya really had the nerve to try and criticize Canelo Alvarez for fighting John Ryder, who's ranked in the top 10, the top 5 of the super middleweight division. Tack on that he's his mandatory challenger, and tack on that Canelo's coming off of hand surgery.
Meanwhile, you're trying to put on fights like this.
There's no excuse for it. Gabriel Rosado's gamesmanship and bravery opposite the ring, some of the best and brightest fighters anywhere in between 154 and 168 pounds.
Made him a cult hero.
His resolve, in spite of being a journeyman with losses in the double digits, it's made him a fan favorite. But in terms of matchmaking, I reiterate, this was a piss-poor offering from Golden Boy Promotions, and it reeks of desperation. How dire the situation is for Golden Boy and some of their fighters that they couldn't have come up with something better than this. Thankfully, the fight's been called off.
But it's all bad. All the way around. It's all bad.
What is Zerto Ramirez going to do now? He is one of at least two fighters at Golden Boy Promotions whose careers don't seem to go into any particular direction. They don't seem to be going anywhere. It's Zerto Ramirez. It's Jaime Munguia.
Take away the weight stuff.
Say that wouldn't have happened. Say the contest would have gone on and Zerto Ramirez would have beaten Gabriel Rosado. Where would he have gone from there? Where? What, cruiserweight?
Because he ain't winning no title with light heavyweight.
You did what you could opposite the ring, Dmitry Bivol, and it wasn't enough. And Dmitry, God bless him, he's far from the heaviest puncher in this division. If they would have put Zerto Ramirez in there with Artur Beterbiev,
Dmitry Bivol took you to school, whereas Artur, he would have put you in the hospital.
a part of what has made Zerto Ramirez a somewhat formidable fighter in the past was his size, his statuesque frame, that he was always huge for super middleweight, and he was still a big guy as far as light heavyweights went, but in terms of talent,
Ability.
he never had the highest ceiling in terms of skill.
Didn't.
Still doesn't. And this latest snafu, I mean, you missed the weight by 7 pounds. Were you even trying to make light heavyweight? Was there a miscommunication? Did something get lost in translation? I mean, what is this?
There's missing the weight, and then there's being over by 7 pounds. You're over by 7 pounds. I really don't think you were trying.
Now, It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom for Zerto because he only has one professional loss after all, and it's to Dmitry Bivol. There's really no shame in that. He can go to cruiserweight, but things are going to have to change.
Don't forget that Badu Jack was in his 40s. He just won the WBC title up there.
On the undercard of Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury over there in the Middle East.
Badu Jack managed to prove me wrong. I thought that Lunga Makabu, being a natural cruiserweight, would prove to be too much for Badu Jack. As it stands, he upset the apple cart for him.
So what if after this latest snafu, the people over there at Golden Boy Promotions, Zerto Ramirez and his team, they regroup, get together, and decide to plot a course to the men's cruiserweight division in order to...
Zerto Ramirez ain't winning a title at light heavyweight, so let's get that clear.
And for what it's worth, I don't think he's got the chops to take the WBO title away from Lawrence Okoli, the WBA title from Arsene Goulamarian, or the IBF title from J.O. Pataya. But Badu Jack...
he stands a chance.
7 pounds over the limit. Zerto Ramirez is busting at the seams. Maybe he can't make light heavyweight anymore. Maybe he has no choice but to go up there to cruiserweight. So what if they formulate an offer for Badu Jack that is to Badu Jack's liking to get him in the ring with Zerto?
That really is Zerto Ramirez's best bet of winning a title.
Today's Badu Jack that is getting longer in the tooth by the day. Zerto's not winning a belt at 175 pounds. That's out of the question. But at cruiserweight, with Badu Jack, he stands a chance. And that's just me bouncing ideas around.
There's nothing stopping them from making that fight.
He just won that belt. To my knowledge, he's not under any orders to satisfy any mandatory challengers, so maybe he can defend it against Zerto as a voluntary.
But Zerto's got to be up for it.
That would be his only chance at becoming a champion again anywhere at or around these weights.
Seems a bit of a fuck-up.
He's got to get his head on straight. And finally, in men's light heavyweight news, Matchroom CEO Frank Smith responds to Joshua Buatsi's claims of inactivity. Apparently, Joshua was attempting to hang the blame for all of that around the necks of the people over there at Matchroom and DAZN.
Seems like he's one of these guys that goes somewhere different, starts acting different.
On Thursday, Frank Smith, the CEO of Matchroom, responded to Buatsi's claims of inactivity, suggesting that Buatsi himself was to blame for his relative inaction inside the ring. There's been delays throughout his career, Smith told pro boxing fans. I saw him say, I was always training, but Josh would go away on holidays, or he would want a 14-week camp or a 12-week camp.
I heard those rumors.
Before Joshua Buatsi officially parted ways with Matchroom and DAZN, I heard that if he was inactive, it was his own fault. He'd want 14-week camps or 12-week camps out with trainer Virgil Hunter in the United States and the time frames. We always wanted him active. We always wanted him to fight every 4 months or whatever it was and keep him busy. So it was frustrating for us as well because we invested in his career and we know how to build fighters. So that was a frustration for us.
You know, that's what never gets said. That the promotional outfits invest in these fighters, thus they don't benefit from their failures.
I was disappointed and upset, really. I guess about some of the ways it was portrayed yesterday and some of the messaging Smith added. I feel like we had a good relationship with Josh. I feel like we did a good job over the 5 or 6 years we were with him. We built together from his professional debut and offered him those big opportunities. We have to move from here. We have to focus on the stable of fighters we have with us.
When you think about what Frank Smith said about Joshua Buatsi's impromptu vacations and his 12 and 14-week camps with Virgil Hunter.
Tack on that he pulled out of the Maxim Vlasov fight with a supposed injury. I never actually bought that cover story. I think the people at Matchroom and DAZN realized Joshua Buatsi didn't have the chops to win that fight, and they pulled him out of it. You tack on that Maxim Vlasov fight, the Jean Pascal fight that never was.
He withdrew from that fight as well. There's your inactivity.
I guess he meant that we wanted to sign an extension, Smith said. We were getting him an opportunity at that point for a voluntary challenge for the world title against probably the pound-for-pound top fighter. It's very standard. It's not untoward in the business. If you ask anyone, that's what they do. Just like a long-term deal he signed now with Sky. Here you go. Here's an opportunity to fight for a voluntary challenge against Dmitry Bivol.
Joshua Buatsi complained that there were strings attached to the fights that they offered him.
The people at Matchroom and DAZN don't seem to be denying that. Their explanation is that's standard issue in the business. That's a standard practice, whether you're talking about Matchroom, Boxer, Top Rank, or Queensberry.
Golden Boy, PBC.
That is generally how those deals, those opportunities really, are structured.
But listen, we've been all through
The
that.
bottom line is, Joshua Buatsi wanted to leave Matchroom in his own because the only kind of fights they had for him were fights he didn't stand much chance of winning. What are we talking about, a B-Vol fight? He wasn't going to win that fight. He wasn't going to win a Callum Smith fight either.
So he hauled tail.
The thing is, he's at Boxer and Sky Sports now, and it's up to Ben Shalom to do more with Joshua Buatsi than Matchroom and DAZN have already done. The past is the past.
You've got to promote this guy now that you've got him. You've got to do the same thing with Lawrence Okoli.
Lawrence, the reigning WBO Cruiserweight champion, who's going to be in action very soon against his mandatory challenger, David Light of Australia.
You managed to get those fighters to migrate from Matchroom over to Boxer, but now that you've got them, what are you going to do with them? What kind of fights are you going to put them in?
Joshua Buatsi, especially when Boxer doesn't have the inside track on the who's who fighters at light heavyweight. Not here today, not right now.
Anthony Yard is over there on BT Sport.
Ought to have better beefs on Top Rank. Dimitri Bivol over there at Matchroom.
Callum Smith is there with him.
Who are you gonna fight? What fights is Ben Shalom gonna put you in that's gonna raise your profile since you thought that Matchroom and DAZN couldn't do
Are
it?
you going to be more active now that you're not at Matchroom and DAZN?
Because you seem to be blaming them for what was your schedule. So your schedule moving forward, I anticipate that it's going to change now.
Are you going to be more active? And if you are more active, who are you going to fight?
And what are the metrics for those fights going to look like, since your main indictment against Matchroom and DAZN seems to be that you were fighting on an app?
Yeah, an app that's now available on Sky, by the way.
Available as a channel on Sky, but that's neither here nor there. Irrelevant to Joshua Buatsi's current situation and decorum.
Ben Shalom is your promoter now.
Lawrence is too, and we're going to see if Ben Shalom can do with them what they feel Eddie Hearn couldn't.
It's up to Ben Shalom to get Lawrence an Arsene Goulamarian fight, or a Badu Jack fight, a J.O. Pataya fight. The responsibility, the onus to do it, make it happen, it's on Ben.
I'm not counting him out, by the way. If Ben can do it, then he can do it, but if he can't,
If he doesn't, that'll make it crystal clear that the real problem here wasn't you guys fighting on an app.
he got a good chunk of what were Matchroom fighters to cross over from Matchroom over to Sky on the premise that he's offering them big cash. He's willing to overpay them.
In order to bring them over.
But at some point, you're going to need a return on that investment. Those investments, really. At some point, promotion.
That's your job now.